I am Thérèse Hope Merandi. I entered the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on August 15th, 1965.
Thank you. Thank you. So many of the sisters have different stories about how they met the MSCs and how they decided to come into the Institute. Would you tell us about your story?
As a very small child, I was very sick. And after I never went to kindergarten because of it, and after recuperating a bit, the doctor had told my parents, a family of 6 children, that I did not have the strength to go to the public school or to the more numerous parochial school. So I met the sisters, being brought to the sisters, and I started my first grade there. My father would leave me off at 6 o'clock in the morning in the chapel with Mother Giovannina. And so there I was, this little one, and I went through my grade school. I started getting much better. And by 4th grade, my parents were going to move me on to the parochial school. And the sisters said, "Leave her here. Leave her here." And they gave me a scholarship up through the 8th grade. This was in Burbank at Villa Cabrini Academy. And then I earned my own scholarship for the high school. So I went through Cabrini education in Burbank with wonderful missionaries of the Sacred Heart. So Mother Cabrini became a part of my daily bread and water.
And so this mirrors somewhat Mother Cabrini as a sickly child. Is that correct?
It's true. It's true.
And so what do you think, but you had the influence, what was the deciding factor, do you think, for you?
I wanted to be a missionary. I fought it. I really fought it. I didn't, when I was in the 4th grade, Mother Edward told me and my good girlfriend, "Thérèse, you're going to be a sister and Marlene's going to be a career woman." And I didn't like that. But I went ahead. But I was always part of many things in sports and the sodality and the outings and the going ahead, but always the spirit of the sisters was such a loving spirit. When I was in high school, I had a very bad concussion from a sports accident, and at that time, I was about 6 weeks at least, very crucial with this concussion, and I couldn't have any light or anything like that. And I remember being drawn more and more from within me to the Lord. But like I said, I fought it. I had many boyfriends, and I had a wonderful boyfriend when I was a senior in high school. And after the prom, and I was queen of the prom, after the prom, I just felt I had to tell Frank, "Look, I don't understand this, but I've got to get it out of my system." And he told me, "Terry, you're finally listening to what your heart really wants." He freed me. And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to try this." And I've been trying it ever since. The Lord has really gotten a hold of me.
This is true. So you have had some interesting missions, some difficult situations, and you've seen the world. Could you tell us that story?
Oh, my Lord. Well, at 21, I was sent to Italy to study, and I had the privilege of studying theology at a time of Vatican II with wonderful professors. And then it came about that I was told I would be going into formation work. And I was wondering how to make this formation work practical after all this good theology. And at that time, the Institute of Psychology of the Gregorian University was opening up, and they were looking to open it up finally to women. And to make a long story short, I was accepted. My congregation asked me, instead of going on to have a specialization in Christology, to go on and do the Institute of Psychology. And it was a real marriage, you would say, the spiritual and the human coming together. Yes, this is the way. We have to build up the humanity and open it to the spiritual. And so I did come back then to the States. I was sent to the formation community in Philadelphia, and I was there for a good 7 years, 5 of them being novice directress. And during those years, I was going back and forth to Central America, to Guatemala, to Nicaragua, and helping with formation as far as accompaniment, as far as testing, and as far as helping us to screen and to help the young people to deepen where God can most love them, because that's what vocation is about. It's not about filling a place. It's about responding to how God loves each and every human person and wants to bring that fullness to wholeness. And if it's as a religious, fine. If it's as a mother or father of a family, a husband and wife, wonderful. It's that call to the greater life that God is working within. So, after some time in the novitiate there in Philadelphia, I was asked to go to Latin America. I had already gone once to Brazil for a meeting, and at that time, I felt so drawn that it frightened me with the beauty and the expansiveness in Rio de Janeiro. I was just overwhelmed. And it, like I said, it frightened me a bit because it was just something of the grandeur of God, I believe. Well, then in 1982, 1983, I was asked to really move to Brazil for formation work. And I was in Brazil from 82 to really 2002, back and forth afterwards when I became part of the general administration. But Brazil was really my roots. In Brazil, I was working in formation across the board with candidates, accompanying juniors, preparing them for perpetual vows. But we did something very wonderful, and always being involved with building up a formator school from all of us who were graduates of the Gregorian for the country, for religious life in Brazil, and for good missionary pastoral life among the people. I have to say that my missionary vocation really deepened and grew much more in Brazil. The best years and the deepest years and the most challenging were in the favela of Borel and Chácara do Céu in Rio de Janeiro, in the area of Tijuca. And we had a wonderful community that we were always working in the midst of the people. This was in the midst of 2 fighting drug cartels in the area. And the things we saw, the things that we experienced are perhaps some of the deepest expressions of what it is to be a missionary. When the military and the police were coming in and torturing these young men, and the blood just streaming down, and seeing them pulled away down the hill, because we lived very much on the top of the hill, Chácara do Céu, and just dragging them down the hill as you would drag a pig. Being where the military were and putting young people's heads into huge tanks of water and really screaming out at them to stop this. And they would say, "Oh, yeah, you really like him, don't you? You really like him." The situation of the poor and those who, yes, they were the little ones selling the drugs, but the big guys coming in during the middle of the night with their huge limousines and being part of the ultra society of Brazil and Rio de Janeiro. But we were there. And even there was a period of time when the church was questioning our presence there. And we went down we had the only car up on top of the hill. We would bring, how many times I would take pregnant women ready to deliver down to the hospital during the night or during gunfire going across between these two cartels. And we would be going down this mountain hill to the hospital. But it was wonderful. It was wonderful being in the midst of the people, being on the ground level with them, and helping to form young people to face these situations. But I was elected for Latin America, so I was what you call the Latin American assistant. So I was back and forth to Brazil, to Argentina, to Paraguay when we set up Paraguay too. But I was going home to visit my father, who at that time was dying from Parkinson's. And I told Mother Lena, "Sister, if you need me for formation in Ethiopia, I am more than willing." And she called me while I was still with my dad and my mother and my family. And she said, "Thérèse, we're going to ask you to go to Ethiopia." And I said, "Fine." And so my father passed away and my family was going ahead fine. And I went to Ethiopia in 2002 and was in Africa until this last December 2022. And those were good years, hard-working years. Again, setting up a formators institute for the religious life within Ethiopia and working with many congregations, and not just working in the formation of the sisters, but having our hands into the life with the people. During that time, we set up what was the Child Jesus Center of Life for abandoned and orphaned children. And throughout that period of 6 years, while the government still allowed, about 500 children went through our center and have been internationally adopted. In 2014, at the General Chapter, our General Superior at that time, Barbara, asked me, she said, "Thérèse, I want you to start thinking of leaving Ethiopia." But I really let it go in one ear and out the other. When she came in 2015, she said, "Well, what are you thinking?" And I said, "About what?" And she said, "About leaving Ethiopia." And I said, "I'm not thinking." I said, "You're really serious, aren't you?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "But I need some time." She said, "I'll give you till the end of 2016, which gave me time to finish different things that, were on the fire there." Then she had told me, "I want you working on more an international basis." And at that time, we were coming up to 2017, which would be the centenary of Mother Cabrini's death. And so the congregation was saying, we really should do something, because that's our way. We don't think of these huge feasts and this type of thing, but to do something on the ground in a missionary way. And that's when we thought the situation of refugees in the world is terrible. This is before Ukraine. Uganda at that time was the place in the world that had the most refugees, surpassing all the refugees in Europe at that time. Uganda had over 2 million refugees. So as the General Council and this investigating group that we were set up, 4 of us, Eulalia from Brazil, Laura from Argentina, Tinky from Swaziland, because I insisted we have a man as a part and a Black person. And so Tinky and myself. And when we boiled it down to the places, we took the suggestion of the Holy Father about helping single women who are mothers, who are refugees in Rome. And 2 of our houses were offered as possibilities. And then Uganda, and Barbara had said, let's look into this solidarity with South Sudan also. So that's how we began this circle of events. We went first in Rome and were with the different Vatican dicasteries to see, and then since the congregation was offering these 2 houses, we could begin to offer this as a possibility. Then we went to Uganda, and we did this through a Jesuit friend of mine from Ethiopia, a Jesuit, Father Odomaro, who had always said, you MSC should be in Uganda. So he got me in touch with Bishop João Baptiste Odama in Gulu, and that's how it began. And Archbishop Odama had said, listen, as much as I would like you to be with us in Gulu, this is northern Uganda, the Diocese of Arua, which is right next door, is much more in need because the refugees are just streaming in. And the snipers on the border are just taking too much advantage. So he himself brought us to Bishop Sabino in Arua, and we started to set up. He was offering us land. He brought us, and we sat and we talked and we organized things. And in the meantime, we had a plan to go up to South Sudan, which we did for a week. And the administration of Solidarity with South Sudan had us visit different places to get to know. And I really felt drawn deep within, as I had with my vocation, as I had with Latin America. I felt drawn to South Sudan. When we came back, and as the General Assembly in Chicago in 2017 accepted everything that was offered, and many people offered themselves, Barbara told me, you can go to South Sudan, but only after Uganda is totally set up. So get to work on the infrastructure and get this going, and we'll work on getting the sisters prepared. And I participated in all of that, doing the orientation with the sisters. We did a week with them there in South Sudan, in Uganda, in the Diocese of Arua in Adjumani, near to Jaipi. And Jaipi was a place that the Jesuits who had been there before, especially Father Frido, who has since died, God rest his soul, had told me, sister, this is God's grace that you are going to Jaipi. Jaipi was a place of a huge massacre during the time of Idi Amin and Joseph Kony's Lord's Resistance Army. There's never been religious there. And that you sisters are going there is God's gift to this people. He said the soil there is drenched in the blood of the people there. So we set out in the way of looking at 4 settlements. In Uganda, they don't call them camps. They're called settlements. And between the UN, the church, and the government of Uganda, these settlements are so much more humane. than any type of camp in any other place in the world. So that was a wonderful working. And once that got set up in 2019, at the end of 2019 in October, I was in South Sudan. My time in South Sudan has been life-changing in the sense of what it is to accompany people. Solidarity with South Sudan is set up in 5 areas of the country. We were, at this last period of time, 23 members from 19 religious congregations, sisters, priests, brothers, of 15 countries. And we live in community. In my community in Kit, which was the pastoral team, we were from Sri Lanka, a Claretian priest, from Kenya, a Mercy sister, from Uganda, a Sacred Heart sister, not missionary of the Sacred Heart, a local congregation, Sacred Heart sister, and from Nigeria, a Holy Child sister, and myself. The working together is an essential. You cannot weather what it is to live in a war-torn conflict that is constantly under the tension of ambushes, kidnappings, torture, death. So I was with these survivors, 8 of them, for these 10 days. And that, I believe, has been one of the deepest experiences in my life. Listening, helping them just to get things out, having the time, that was the important thing. So much of our trauma work in trauma healing in South Sudan is that, having the time to be with and accompany. It's a blessing. It's torturous. It's very, very challenging. But it's relieving. And it's a sense of opening oneself to the grace of God that comes, and the healing, and the greater strength to keep going ahead with hope. How people teach us this, be it in the favela in Rio de Janeiro, be it in South Sudan, be it in Ukraine now. The reality of the cross, giving a glimpse to what will be deeper life that we cannot imagine. Of course, when I left South Sudan, I needed time for my debriefing and my filtering and my integrating. And thanks to the beloved familyness of the missionary sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, I have had that time since January, it being May now. Through the grace and privilege that I'm being given, I have been asked to go to the heart of our institute, the Mother House in Codogno, Italy, where we have our Missionary Spirituality Center. And it's where Mother Cabrini began. And I truly feel it is such a gift that I have been called to this, to accompany, to walk with, to be open to others in that way, and to continue the wonderful legacy that has been built up by our sisters, especially Sister Maria Barbagallo there in Codogno, and to allow the giftedness to be not only passed on, but deepened, expanded, and shared. So I'm very grateful for this gift and this privilege and blessing that it will be to go to Codogno. I'll be leaving, God willing, the end of May.
Now I have a question that was brought up by something you said earlier about women. What is it about being a woman in this life that works for you? Or why is it important that women are doing this work?
Women, everything about us, everything about our body is to give life and to receive life. So women have a capacity towards opening themselves to vulnerability, to woundedness, to the other, to be more inclusive. If we as women develop these capacities. When there are wounds, as there always will be in life, for anyone, we have to be able not to run away from them. We will always carry our wounds with us. Our work is to keep them clean so that they teach us a sensitivity and an understanding to ourselves, to others, of life, of reality. And it makes us then more capable of accompanying, building up, not that we build up. The grace of God works and He builds up within the relating, which is a mystery of this communion that we're all called to in life as human beings, as the human family.
Can you use one word to describe the sisters or the Institute?
Jesus Christ. It's a love relationship. It's a mystery how God draws us into this love relationship. And that's what the goodness of life is about. Deepening love relationship. And all the rest slowly will fall away. Let's look at Him Himself. That's why it's two words. Love relationship, but it's Jesus Christ, because He shows us the way. And He secures us. You know, God will never lead anyone where grace has already not gone ahead to prepare the way. So we're called to free ourselves and put on wings, and we'll be much happier. We're called to happiness. And what makes us happiness is love and life and relationship.